Welcome to the You're Not Crazy podcast, hosted by Jessica Knight, a certified life coach who specializes in healing from narcissistic and emotional abuse. This podcast is intended to help you identify manipulative and abusive behavior, set boundaries with yourself and others, and heal the relationship with yourself so you can learn to love in a healthy way. You can connect with Jessica and find additional resources, content, and coaching at emotionalabusecoach.com.
Hello, and thank you for being here. Before we dive in, I want to go through the fine print and share how we can work together. Because healing from this kind of pain takes a lot more than time. It takes the right kind of support. I work with people entangling themselves from emotionally abusive relationships, coercive control, trauma bonds, high conflict co-parenting dynamics, high conflict divorce, and if you're at the beginning of the road and wondering what divorce would look like. I offer one-on-one coaching at every stage. If you're still in the relationship, if you're unsure if it's abuse, if you know it's abuse but you're having trouble understanding what that looks like, or what to do with it, I can help you name what's happening, start setting boundaries that work for you, and figure out what you need. If you're thinking about leaving, we'll explore what that might look like in a grounded and personalized way. If you're navigating divorce or custody or co-parenting with a high conflict person, I can help you document, strategize, and stay emotionally anchored, especially when you're being gaslit, discredited, and re-traumatized by the legal system. If you've already left and you're stuck in the trauma bond, or if you've been discarded and struggling to feel like yourself again, I can help you rebuild self-trust and reconnect with your own nervous system in a way that actually feels doable. Everything I do is highly personalized. I don't walk you through a one-size-fits-all program. I listen, I reflect, and I guide you based on what you're facing right now. And some people work with me through a one-time validation call, which is offered on my website, where we zero in on one issue you're struggling with and start to untangle it together. Others work with me on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, depending on what's going on in your specific situation. And this is especially helpful when healing from emotional abuse and also in divorce. If you're curious about starting, I offer a $25 intro call, which if you listen to my older episodes, I call it a clarity call. It did used to be free, and I talk about it at a later episode, but really a lot of people were no-showing to those calls, and that was taking away time from clients that I do work one-on-one with. And so if we move forward, I just take that fee and apply it to your first session. That intro call is just for us to get on the same page so you can share what's going on for you and I can share how I might be able to help. I only take a limited number of those calls per month because one-on-one coaching is the core of my work. Out of all these offerings that I have, one-on-one coaching is the thing that I do the most, and I do it 6 days a week most of the time, 5 to 6 days a week. And so if my calendar looks full and if there's not a time that you can get in, you can email me at jessicaknightcoaching.com, and I always try and make space where I can. And I may also always have a few openings from one-on-one client reschedules. You can also explore self-paced courses and toolkits at jessicaknight.thinkific.com, including Divorcing a Narcissist 101 and the Emotional Abuse Breakthrough course. I have a documentation course and my new signature program, Unhooked, which is a private podcast and course that walks you through the full cycle of abuse, helps you map it in your relationship and how to break it and how to begin to see what it really is that you're going through. If you want ongoing support in a more flexible way, you could always check out my Substack at jessicaknight.substack.com. Each month I focus on a different theme, from trauma bonding to divorce to cluster B to sexual coercion to emotional abuse to toxic breakups. Those are just some from this year. Paid members get access to monthly deep dives, master classes, Q&As, strategy kits, and I'm working on some more group options. There is also a free option and a monthly option. So please head over to Substack. The link is in my show notes. You also can just search Jessica Knight Coaching and I'll come up. Everything that I create is meant to help. My coaching, my writing, my courses, this podcast, it's built around the one truth that you're not crazy. You are conditioned to doubt your reality, and I want to help you change that and understand what you're going through. If you like this podcast, the best thing that you can do is subscribe and rate the episode 5 stars. You can find me on my websites, emotionalabusecoach.com and high-conflict divorcecoaching.com. All of the offerings that I just mentioned are also in the show notes below. Now let's get to the episode. It's probably not a surprise to many people that around the holidays, and particularly around this time, we start to see a lot of the typical patterns of abuse come up, and a lot of people start to question, is that what's going on in my relationship? Is that what's happening here? Because it becomes hard to ignore, especially when you have the contrast of maybe healthy dynamics, healthy partnerships, whether that's family, friends, who you see out in public, or if it's, through events at communities, religious organizations, or even your children's school, you may start to see that there's so many other places where you're seeing this contrast of behaviors, then you have your reality and what you're living. And I know that around the holidays was definitely a time that in numerous relationships, I started to see, when the pressure cooker is on and also the appearances and the pressure of appearances, things really start to come to surface. And so in my work, it's not surprising to me that I have more people reach out around the holidays around this time. And it's also not surprising to me that people find themselves in family court or starting that around this time, because everything becomes a battleground a lot of the time. And I wanted to do this today because I feel like a lot of people are, or maybe going in and out of some of these times that are supposed to be, in air quotes, happy, supposed to be joyful, and they're not feeling joyful. And I remember, and I grew up in abuse, so I felt dead a lot of my childhood, honestly. Like, I hated holidays. I still don't like them. I like them more now because I see them through the eyes of my daughter. But if that didn't exist, I probably would avoid them. And I think that with the pressure of appearances, the pressure of putting on your happy face, when you're actually feeling that deadness inside, it can feel much harder to put on the next happy face. And so I want to talk about the moment that you see it, because if you're going through that, and whether you listen to this and then it clicks for you, or you're going back and listening through episodes, I think it can be validating, because it's not just a stressful time of year. It is a stressful time of year, but how that person reacts to stress and the way that they react to stress and how they manage stress around this time of year also says a lot too. Because when you're living inside it, it's almost impossible to see, and you know that something feels off. It shouldn't feel this confusing or volatile or draining or chaotic. And 1 minute you may feel okay, and the next you may notice that you're walking on eggshells, and then somehow something's going to happen and it's all your fault, even if it is snow or traffic, a flight cancellation, a toy that didn't get delivered on time, a family event that they agreed to but now they don't want to go to. This is the cycle of abuse, and the cycle is what keeps you hooked, because it alternates between that punishment and the relief and the cruelty and calmness, and it teaches your nervous system to crave that person that's hurting you. That's what a trauma bond is. I go through this in my private podcast, Unhooked. I'll link it in the show notes so you have it. And the purpose of that private podcast is to really dive in to a lot of the ins and outs of the cycle of abuse, so you can begin to break yourself free from it. The cycle of abuse looks like this, and this is the very, very, very simplified version. It starts with tension building. You feel that shift at first. You start monitoring their moods. You start changing your tone. You might tiptoe around anything that might seem off, and you start doing their emotional labor, managing their discomfort before it erupts. The explosion, that's part 2. It's when the emotional offloading happens. And so they raise their voice, they'll twist the narrative, they accuse, they project. This is essentially the abusive incident that happens. Anything to get the discomfort out of their body and onto yours. It's when the blame becomes their rage. And a lot of times, once they get that out, they're wondering why you're not just moving on. Or now all of a sudden, you're the Grinch. Then there's reconciliation. This usually will come right after the explosion. A lot of times this happens in the car right before you have to go into something and put a smile on. They will do this the entire drive there, and you may be sitting there saying, let's just calm this down. Let's just focus. Let's just sort of get this back to normal. We're about to go into this thing. And it's like the second that the car parks, now they want to reconcile when you're like, there's no time. And you most likely have spent this entire time panicking and then trying to get your happy face on. They could apologize. Maybe they act like nothing happened, but you're exhausted. And so you take the peace wherever you can find it, or even just time to press reset. You might go to the bathroom. I can't tell you how many times and hours spent in the bathroom crying and then wiping my tears off, splashing on water, getting through the night, watching this person now be kind and calm to me and tell me that they love me. And then for me to not be okay after, because splashing water on myself doesn't heal abuse. Over time, your body starts to confuse that relief of just, now we're not fighting right now, or we can exist here, for this feeling of safety. And that's literally what forms a trauma bond. And then it goes to calm, or the illusion of calm. And for a while, things may seem good. Start to breathe again. Start to hope that maybe this time it's different. Maybe it was just this moment of the holidays. Maybe it was just that event. Maybe it was that holiday party. But then the tension builds again. And round it goes until you start to believe that this is what love feels like. Unstable, heavy, impossible to name, confusing, chaotic. And when you finally see the cycle for what it is, something inside of you changes. And this is why I have that private podcast Unhooked, because the more and more people that I've worked with, and more I've looked at my own healing, the one thing that I can pinpoint is that when I started to see the cycle, something in me changed. Because I started to notice how every calm moment was just the quiet before the next explosion, and how apologies were part of the control cycle, and how much of myself I gave trying to keep things from breaking again, even though it was breaking me. Seeing the pattern is the first step, and breaking it, really working through it, is the real work, because awareness doesn't end with the cycle. It ends with action. And every small action that you take, every boundary, every moment of self-protection, every moment of awareness is what begins to set you free. And even though I go through this in depth in that private podcast Unhooked, I'm going to take a second actually and go through some of the ways that you can break the cycle. Because if this is what you're dealing with, having some language may help. And so it first doesn't start with confronting the other person. It actually, in my perspective, starts with your own truth. And so saying the words that feel dangerous to say out, you basically will say the words that feel dangerous to say out loud. And these are just words you say to yourself. This is abuse. This isn't love. It's not safe. This is not okay. The way I see this is you telling yourself the truth privately, so that you don't negotiate with the lie anymore. You also can begin to break the pattern of self-blame. The entire cycle actually depends on you blaming yourself. And that's how they keep control. You've been trained to believe that you caused the explosions, or that you are too sensitive, that you should have known how to say it better. That's not a self-awareness thing. That's a trauma conditioning. You don't cause their outbursts, their reactions. You didn't make them act that way. You reacted to abuse, and reacting to abuse does not make you abusive. And so sometimes it means reclaiming that narrative for yourself by saying, this is not mine to hold. I have a lot of podcasts on fawning that I'll link one below, but fawning is a trauma response. And this one runs deep, because if you grew up around emotional abuse, you probably learned that keeping others calm keeps you safe. You learned to anticipate or appease or overfunction anything just to keep the peace. But Fawning is actually your body's survival code. It says, maybe if I'm soft enough, kind enough, invisible enough, silent enough, they won't hurt me. But you can't silent yourself enough to make somebody else be safe. And so I think it's about letting go of the belief that you can't just prevent chaos by disappearing. You can take tiny little steps to choose your safety over their comfort, even when it makes you feel guilty, because that guilt is actually just your nervous system recalibrating to the truth of what's here. You also can begin to think about breaking the trauma bond. And this is the hardest part because the trauma bond doesn't live in logic, and it's created through intermittent reinforcement, which is abuse followed by affection, cruelty followed by comfort, punishment followed by peace, and your nervous system learns that love feels like relief after pain. Breaking it doesn't start with just being indifferent. It starts with choosing reality over the fantasy and seeing what's real instead of clinging to what you hoped it would be. You're going to grieve that illusion. You'll miss the version of them that maybe didn't even exist, but beginning to learn more about it, break it, working with somebody like me or somebody else to begin to break the trauma bond, even if you're in a relationship, can really help. If you are in a place where you can begin detaching, which I know a lot of us are not, you can begin to remove access to your nervous system. They might escalate when they feel you detaching, through love bombing or guilt or anger, and that's not a sign that you did something wrong. It's actually confirmation that you're breaking the pattern, because you don't owe them a gentle exit or a nice goodbye. You actually just owe yourself that safety. Breaking the cycle is not one big moment. It's 1,000 small ones that you choose. And it's choosing yourself in ways that you never thought that you could. And it's feeling guilt and questioning that guilt, but then doing it anyway, because you're walking away from something that's chaotic. And there's so many more podcasts that I have on the cycle of abuse, on healing, on detaching, on understanding. And if you are stuck and if you need a bit of a lifeline, I invite you to listen to them, because one of the things that I did when I was first beginning to heal is every single day when I walked home from dropping my child off at school, I'd put in one podcast on this topic or an audiobook or something, and I began to fill my mind with another narrative that didn't say everything that you're doing is wrong, because that's all I was hearing all the time. And if you're feeling stuck, I want you to know that even by listening to this, you're already taking a big step. You named it, you questioned it, you said, I don't want to live this anymore. And that's when healing begins. If you are ready to go deeper, you always can reach out to me at emotionalabusecoach.com, or you can email me at jessica@jessicaknightcoaching.com. And like I said, if this is kind of hitting exactly where you are right now, I invite you to listen to Unhooked, my private podcast for survivors breaking free from the cycle of abuse. It's linked in the show notes below. It's also on my website. And I really hope that you walk away this season just knowing that you're not crazy.